Hello there, my name is Martin Henley. This is the Effective Marketing Company YouTube channel, and this is the very first episode of Effective Marketing News, which was an idea that I had when I was speaking to Ionut much earlier in the year in the Talk Marketing series, and he told me that he spends 90 minutes per day just catching up on what's going on in the news and keeping on top of the different tools, etc., etc., etc. So I thought it would be a good idea if we had a marketing news aspect to this channel, so that essentially we will do the work, we will find out what the news is, we will tell it to you, and you won't have to go looking for it, is the idea. Now, because this was Ionut's idea, I've got Ionut to commit to being involved in the first 7 episodes of the marketing news. So he is right here. How are you, Ionut?
I'm doing good. And 7 episodes. I was not sold for 7 episodes. I know, I'm joking. Yeah, excited to be here. Let's see. I came with 0 expectations.
Okay, good.
That's always a good one, right?
Yeah. Well, I was hoping to. I'm going to have to do this manually because I can't work out how to split the screen. I can split the screen. We will be splitting the screen in episode number 2. So what's the point? The point is that I was hoping to wow you with the technology, but now we're here and doing it. I can't. I've got a beautiful little graphic overlay that says Ionut Danifeld with the Trapo logo, Chief Marketing Officer at Trapo, etc., etc., etc.
I need to show also the t-shirt.
You can show this t-shirt. So if we come to, not to me, to you. So show us the Trapo t-shirt.
Okay.
Very nice. I mean, I could do this quite easily. Do you want to see the thing that I made? If we are... I mean, the expectation when we spoke about this was that the first one's just going to be shit, wasn't it? That's what we agreed. So I think it probably is. So while you're on the screen, name, title, Ionut, name, title, overlays. Are you ready? Here it comes.
I'm ready to be wow.
Add animated overlay. Are you seeing the screen?
I'm seeing you, which I'm already used to it.
Right, so the overlay is here. It's going to be in the recording. You'll have to wait till you see it in the recording. Let me make it the right size and then play it again. So it says Ionut Danifeld Trapo CMO. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay, good. So here we are, bogged down in the technicals. It's fine. The first one's going to be shit. So we decided for this first one, what I think will happen in the future, depending on how regularly it warrants it, we'll either do this weekly or fortnightly or monthly. We'll start trying weekly, see if there's enough news to keep us busy. But what we've decided for this first one is that we are going to do a review of 2021, the big marketing news that happened in 2021. So your mission, whether you've accepted it or otherwise, we will find out now, was to go away and find 3 or 4 news stories of 2021 that you felt were the major news stories. Did you do your homework, Ionut?
It feels like in school. Yes, I did my homework.
Okay, cool.
And I have actually 3 stories. And it came actually, the idea from the story, it came when we did a review with one of our tools, our email marketing tool, and we were going about, okay, how was 2021 for Trapo, how we performed, and what's going to happen in 2022. And I realized that 2021, it was a really challenging year for all of us with this entire pandemic, and especially for, well, I will say everyone, but I mean also the people in marketing, because we had to continuously, I would say, reinvent ourselves and find new ways to basically to escape the shitstorm, if I can say the shitstorm. And the shitstorm, I think that it came from multiple fronts. It came with Apple. So here are my 3 topics.
Okay.
So the 3 topics are the iOS 15 and all of the updates that happened with iOS 15. and the entire saga that happened with Facebook and the silent war with Facebook and iOS 15. So that's number one. And it's quite challenging how this is moving more and more to privacy, and how a marketer needs to reinvent himself and go a little bit back to the origin. And what used to work in the beginning of the year is definitely not going to work properly next year. So iOS 15 and privacy. Another one is the single days. I don't know where exactly is your audience, but single days is actually starting to pick up really, really fast. So what I mean by single days, I mean like 11, 11, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, 12. And single days, I was reading a really interesting statistic, so you can see, but I have also numbers. This one is boosting my credibility, right? Usually when someone is coming with numbers, it's like, that guy actually knows what he's talking about. So apparently, single days generated $84 billion in 2021.
Okay, we're getting into the detail. I don't even know what single days is. So when we come to talk about it, you can tell us all about it. That's cool. Right. So we've got iOS 15. Is it iOS 15?
iOS 15 and privacy,
single days,
and the other one is the importance of I would say analytics. I think that analytics played a huge role in 2021, and it's going to play an even bigger role in 2022.
Okay. All right, good. My three are much more generic and much more about this, and a little bit maybe contentious also. So the first one that really intrigued me, or the first really big story of the year, was Trump getting banned, like Trump getting cancelled, basically.
And we're going to politics?
We're not really doing politics, no, but we are doing marketing, and I think it's going to be really interesting because I think Trump was, well, we'll talk about it when we're going to talk about it. But this is my first, The second one is the biggest story, not really marketing story, but I want to talk about the COVID vaccine in a marketing aspect. Because I was doing a training recently and I did like this product life cycle thing. And it just seems to me that the COVID vaccine is probably the least successful marketing campaign ever for like a number of reasons. So I think if there's a case study on how not to do marketing, it happened in 2021 on a global scale. So I'm interested in that. And then the third one that I wanted to talk about was, it's gone out of my mind. In future, I will write these things down. I think it might have also been the privacy thing. And no, the way I was framing it was the war between Apple and Facebook. But that's the same. It's the same as yours, essentially. So we've got five. If you're happy to talk about those five.
Definitely.
Okay, good. They're not too political, not too contentious for you?
Depends depending on the angle. Let's see.
No, I know what we can go to a sixth. The sixth one then I want to be Meta, because like for me that kind of bookended the year. So the start was Trump getting cancelled. The end was kind of Meta. When was that announced? 2-3 weeks ago. So I'm kind of interested in
a little bit more.
A little bit more than that, was it already?
Yeah, it was like 3 months ago.
Somebody wanted to do so. I was organising to do something. This is how badly out of whack I am with the universe and what even month it is. Someone wanted to do something and they said, we'll do it on like the 12th of December or something. I'm like, no, I want to do it soon. And then I'm like, no. The 12th of December was like 2 days' time. So that's how out of whack I am with even what month it is. So, okay, good. So where do we start then? Shall we start with, yours are much more technical than mine. So let's start with the Trump thing, because I think this is marketing, because the social media platforms are marketing tools. Trump reportedly was getting ready to go to war with the social media platforms. The distinction is whether they're platforms or whether they're publishers or not, or whether they are just platforms for communication. So this was kind of like the way I was thinking about it. Like, what does it mean? Well, in the last 5-6 years, when I've taught social media, I've always said to people, what I want to say. What I say to people, like when I teach digital marketing, there's a section always on websites. And for a large period of time, websites weren't particularly relevant because people could do their sales on Facebook or Etsy or any of these dozens of things, you know what I mean? And eventually they could do it on Instagram. But what's become apparent over the last 5 years is that nobody's safe. No marketing investment you make in a social media platform is safe because the social media platforms can take away all of that work in a second and there's no recourse. So I suppose it's not even about Donald Trump. It's about the fact that if they can cancel the president of the United States, they can cancel any of us. So that's what I think it was about. And the issue for us as marketeers is if they are cancelling the president of the United States and he gets re-elected in 2024, they are going to be bang in trouble, you know. So he's coming out with his own social media platform now, isn't he? Is it called the Truth Media or something? I don't know.
Which is basically doesn't work. Or it has a bunch of supporters. Okay, continue.
Well, the argument there is, because I've been following this a little bit recently, is that essentially 50% of certainly the voting population of the United States, so that's maybe, what is that, 120 million people, are Trump supporters. So the issue with launching a new platform, and maybe the reason that we haven't seen one recently, is because there's no audience. So I don't know if you've been following this thing with Bumble and stuff. I don't know if you're as interested in these platforms as I am, but Bumble is now Bumble was bought out to combat the censorship on YouTube by one of the leading political type guys. And now it's being sold out to Wall Street, essentially. So it's going back into the loops. It's going to go around again. But apparently Trump's thing is going to be alongside Bumble or one of these new platforms. But what Trump brings is huge audience. So that's why Trump is central to this. You don't do much YouTube. You don't do much video, do you? Do you?
I do a lot of TikTok. I'm fascinated about TikTok.
Because you do a lot of marketing on TikTok, or you do?
You're talking about the company? Yeah. We do TikTok, we do YouTube, we do all of this. I mean, like, I think that you need to be relevant to stay up to trend.
Yes.
So yeah, I can say that I'm doing also YouTube.
Okay. So this, I think, I mean, you snuck up on me saying, you know, what's coming up for 2022. Maybe that should be the first video that we do in 2022, is what do we think is going to happen. But it seems to me that the social media landscape is going to change quite dramatically because of this censorship that's going on. And because, I mean, I don't know, if we're talking about products and services, if we're marketers, I mean, it has changed dramatically. You know, the algorithm seems to me to be these days, if you want to play, you have to pay. That seems to be the way it's gone. And I just don't think that occupying that space anymore is as secure an investment as it had been previously. That's what I kind of think.
Well, there are a couple of things regarding, I want to shift a little bit. I mean, in a way, it's a connection with what you said regarding Donald Trump. I was actually, while you were talking, I was actually searching the definition of the social media. Do you know the definition of social media?
I know about a dozen definitions of social media since there was a really good one about 2008. I remember that.
Well, the simple one from Oxford is saying the following: the websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. That's basically social media, according to the Oxford language or the Oxford dictionary. What I think that at the moment, and I think that we had this before this discussion, I don't think that there is so much social in social media. There is probably more media. So that's basically my problem at the moment. I think exactly how you said. In order to have that reach, and every time I was saying this also when I was doing consultancy before Trump, is the reach now is like what, 1-2%? I mean, like, look at us. I mean, like, organically we have 140,000 people, but probably the reach is about there, you know, like 2,000, 4,000 people that are viewing a single post. So that's on the Facebook, and I'm absolutely sure that everything that is regarding other social networks is the same. Regarding what happened with Donald Trump, even once again, I don't want to go so much into a political discussion, is that a certain level of responsibility needs to come into action. So you're going to ask yourself, okay, where is that certain level of responsibility? Because if you're a so-called influencer, I hate the word influencer, I like to call it more an opinion maker. So basically the one that is defining opinion, changing opinions, you need to have a certain level of responsibility. Now, the certain level of responsibility, okay, we shouldn't agree with everyone, we should have different points of view, but it definitely ended up on a curve that was basically not okay. Now, where is actually the censorship coming? I mean, like if I'm going now on the social media and I'm basically saying that Donald Trump is a dick, nobody is basically going to censor me or is going to close my account, right? But because you're that opinion leader and you're basically saying to the crowd to do X and Y and Z, I think that here is where I have a problem. If you ask me that the decision of all of the social networks to actually ban a character, even if it's called Donald Trump, I think that was the right decision, right? And what I think that was even more fascinating, it was probably the first big, bold movement of the social media, because if you're looking back to the numbers, people that were actually coming on Twitter, people that were actually coming on Instagram, they were coming on Facebook, and they were sharing, retweeting, commenting, and etc., yada, 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 which is basically the purpose of the social media. And they were doing all of these things, so the engagement of the platform was doing. And I think that I'm totally supportive with this. Even if I like or dislike Donald Trump, I think that you as an opinion leader, you should take responsibility and be careful how you kind of like target the message, and you should be accountable for the things that you're saying on the social media. So that's my view.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that this. So I think what we're talking about is this cancel culture, and I think cancel culture's been like a big story this year, hasn't it? There's all sorts of censorship going on, and yeah, I just see. Because I think essentially there was some kind of judgment really recently where Donald Trump was exonerated, not being involved at all in what had gone on. So actually they weren't justified. But the argument is that there are laws in place to manage this. You know, there's freedom of speech type laws, and there's principles where, you know, it's established what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. So I just think that this censorship and this deplatforming and this cancel culture thing is going to change the way, like you, I don't think there's anything very social about social media anymore. I think it's literally it's a media. It's, you want to be involved, you pay.
It's a media, and it's a media, right? And it's a media in the end of the day. Okay, we can we can do basically 20 episodes every single week regarding this decision regarding the social media. But where I stay really strong on it is that you, at the moment, once again, if you're an opinion leader and you're trying to influence different people to do an action, and that those people are doing that certain action that is basically harming others, then I have me as a company. Because in the end of the day, all of the social media platforms are company, right? They are not open source, right? They have stakeholders, they have investors, and so on. So I think that to a certain definition, they are obeying also to the laws, right? The freedom of speech is there as long as it doesn't hurt the others, right? But I think that we are going a little bit different from the subject regarding marketing and the news.
So I didn't want to spend this long talking about it necessarily, but I just think that marketers need to be aware of this cancel culture, because, you know, I imagine that there are brands who are getting deplatformed. That I imagine that's going on because they aren't quite where they need to be. Like, we know that hundreds of people are getting deplatformed every week or every month, and I just think it's interesting. I think the more this goes on, I think the more it's going to affect the audiences. And, I think social media is under attack in maybe the more interesting ways we're going to talk about it. The Facebook versus Apple thing is more interesting than this. But I just think and I've been telling people this forever, you don't own your social media. So you need to be careful as a marketer in terms of how much you invest, because that could go away overnight. That really could go away overnight. And obviously, that's just the way I think about it. And we just started the year with the biggest example. If they can cancel the president of the United States, then arguably they've got too powerful, is what I would say. Right, let's go to one of your stories. Let's talk about something that caught your attention. Tell me about this single digits thing. What is that about?
Single digits, single days, man.
Single days.
The single days is basically a concept. Okay, so the single days is actually started in China. The concept is coming from Alibaba, and it's double 11. So that's basically the single days, and it became in the last years it became the single day. So that's the original. We started a few years ago in China.
So it's the 10th of November, is that what you're talking about? The 10th of October, the 11th of, the 1st of January?
11, 10, 10, 12, 12. These are single days. They're called single days, right? So we started in China, the 11/11, the single day, 11/11, that's the original day. And it's basically bigger than, it's actually bigger than Black Friday.
So I still don't understand. You're talking about 10/10 is the 10th of October.
10th of October,
11th of November, 1st of January.
And so on and so on.
Okay.
Right?
So this is an e-commerce, it's an online buying thing, is it?
It's an online buying thing, but it's actually moving a lot to offline. And in the beginning, it was in China. It moved to the entire it was catching rapidly to the entire Southeast Asia. It's actually starting to be a global phenomenon, and I was reading something that even Australia, there are companies in Australia now that they're creating also all of these single days, and they're putting a little bit more focus on the single days rather than Black Friday. And as I was saying, it basically generated $84 billion in 2021. Which is bigger than Black Friday worldwide. And
do we know how much Black Friday generates?
Let's see how much Black Friday.
Okay.
Black Friday 20. I can search for it.
Okay. I mean, the interesting thing to me is it sounds like a Black Friday, but they get to do it every month. That's how it sounds to me.
What I want basically to say, besides the fact that it's becoming a global phenomenon, is becoming a little bit of absurd, because if in the beginning it was only double 11 and 12/12, this year starting from last year, they started to do 9/9, 10/10 also.
Yes.
And for example, Shopee and Lazada, for the ones that they don't know, is basically kind of like the eBay and Amazon here in Asia. They are doing now every single month an event, like 1/1, 2/2, etc., etc. And the problem that I have as a company and as a business owner is that for me, for a marketing, it doesn't create so much the scarcity. And I think that when it doesn't create the scarcity, because basically the trend that you see, people are just waiting for all of these single days. And it's kind of becoming a lot of a saturated market. And there is absolutely, I was having a discussion with the guys from Shopee, and I told them, Shopee or Lazada, I don't remember who, and I told them that there is zero sense of doing a 1/1, because people are not going to be on the platform, and it's already a first day of the year. And they were like, no, but we need to stay trendy, and we're pushing a lot, and etc., yada, yada, yada. And it's getting a little bit ridiculous, but that's a fact that as I said, marketers, they need to stay relevant, and the relevancy needs to be that in order to make sales, you need to be up to trend, and you need to do all of this single days. And it's so interesting that I barely finished 12/12, and I'm already talking about 1/1 and 2/2 and 3/3 and signing packages with all of these marketplaces and planning campaigns for all of these single days. So I hope I gave you a better definition.
Okay, so it sounds to me like I'm a little bit, because I'm old, I'm a little bit upset about the way the world's gone, where it seems like there's something every month that is becoming like a consumer demand. Like when I was a kid, it used to be Christmas and Easter, you'd get Easter eggs, but now it's like Father's Day is much bigger and Mother's Day is much bigger and Halloween is much bigger than it ever was before. So it feels like markets are really promoting Halloween. Halloween was never a thing when I was a kid, and now it seems to be huge. So now they've got all of these kind of festival days throughout the year, celebration days throughout the year, plus they will now get these single days that you're talking about. And it seems to me like the way you're talking about it is a little bit like the tail wagging the dog, where the retailers are demanding of retailers like yourselves that you have to put offers on, especially for this every month, and you have to drive your marketing around these dates every month. And it's the offers thing that's like, why should they dictate that you should be discounting, essentially, which is what you're going to have to do? It's about offers, is it? It's about reducing the price.
It's about reducing the price, it's about discounts, because if not, the competitors are going to they're going to do it, right? So you as a company, you're a little bit squeezed by the door.
Yeah.
By I wouldn't say necessarily by this, because it's not necessarily all the time about the marketplaces. It's also about the trend. And if you're not going to do it, it's basically the competitors are going to jump in, because also it's an interesting fact regarding the single days. So another interesting trend that I see is that, so during the pandemic, where it was all of this lockdown, all of these marketplaces, they were doing a lot of incentives, and they were creating all of these shocking sales, and they were creating all of these single days and they were actually subsidizing companies. So for example, me, if I'm doing 10%, a marketplace is giving another 5%, right? But I'm getting basically the 10%, but the end user is going to see 15% off. So an interesting trend that we're seeing is that the traffic that is going to the brand.com, compare with the previous year or even in the beginning of the year, is actually lower. Because the user behavior they're actually going, when it was the lockdown, they were actually going on the marketplaces. They were doing a lot of shopping, staying home. People are bored and they're usually buying online.
Yeah.
And the first place that you're actually going to buy it from the marketplaces, whatever is Shopee, Lazada, Amazon, and so on.
Yes.
So the problem for me is that as a company, my revenue is going down, because I'm buying from all of this market. My customers are buying from the marketplace, but they're not buying from the brand.com. The question is, how can you incentivize them to come back to your website?
And that is a question, and this has been the elephant in the room forever in kind of affiliate sales through Amazon originally, like you say, Shopee, Lazada, is that you never own your customer. So when I talk to people about what marketing is, it's about finding, winning, keeping customers, but you never own your customer, because they always own your customer. And the thing is, there was some backlash, I think, this year on Black Friday, because they did like an expose in the UK, I saw, where they were actually monitoring the prices for 3-4 months before Black Friday. And what they saw is that people just businesses inflated the prices in the run up to Black Friday, so it could look like they were discounting them on Black Friday. The thing is, it's not real, is it? That you're still, unless you are absolutely an angel that's going straight to heaven, you have to factor in profit you have to factor in profit to your sales, or else you won't be in business very long. That's the problem. Okay, really interesting. I had
Exactly.
no idea that was happening. And you're right, it has to be a scarcity. If everybody believes that this is the one day in the year that you get these amazing sales, these amazing discounts, then clearly that has some energy around it. If it's just going to be every month, then that's going to have much less energy around it. And I think what businesses will have to do is inflate their prices so that they don't get caught. Okay, good. That was interesting. I didn't even know that was going on. Okay, good. What was my second one? My second one, I want to talk about the vaccine. And I want to talk about, it seems weird to me about, like, if you think about it, I don't want to get into if you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, whether you believe in it, not believe in it, otherwise. It just seems to me that this is the least successful marketing. If this was ever a marketing campaign, it was the least successful marketing campaign ever. You have to accept that surely it's better that people consent to these things rather than are forced to do them. But it seems to me that they didn't, like, if I tell people like what marketing is, it's basically landing the right message, having the right product, and knowing your market, developing the right product, and then landing the right message on the right people at the right time. And it just seemed to me that they just got it completely wrong. They clearly didn't know their market. They came up with a product that doesn't seem to work. The PR around it was appalling because no one, occasionally, just the PR is like the reputation around it is appalling. And then, so this, have you seen this product life cycle kind of graph? So you get the disciples are the first people to buy from you, and then the early adopters, and then the mass market will come, and then the conservatives eventually, and then the skeptics. But it just seemed to me that, I mean, if the objective of it was wrong, like, I don't know why they had to get 100% of people, or why they had to state that they wanted 100% of people. And I think it goes to something that I've always said to people. Like, very often I've met with a client or a prospective client, and they're like, people have to do this, people have to buy from me. And I've always said to them, you might scare people into buying something once, but they will find someone to buy it from who is much less scary. Do you know what I mean? So it just seems to me that this is clearly the biggest story of the year. This is the biggest thing that's happened this year. And it just seems to me like they got it wrong. Or they got it wrong in places. Like in some places, Israel, they've had huge take-up. So clearly it's worked there. I just think it's interesting to think of it as like a marketing exercise. What do you think?
I think that is important to understand how you're putting the message and how you're distributing that message to the mass market.
Yes.
And I think that another, so that's one. And I think that the second is the culture. So where basically the entire vaccination campaign was working was in cultures that people are a little bit more obedient, and where in cultures where people, they trust the government.
Yes.
Right. So culture, I think culture and until a certain extent, the political environment, if I trust my politician that is saying X, Y, Z to me, I'm going to do it. So that's really important, culture in politics. And it's really important to see if you want, I'm going to always say it, if you want your life back, I think that we need to do this vaccine. But I don't want once again to go into the vaccination, because I think that we're talking about the marketing. So
yes,
if we take it one by one, the people are really important. Or sorry, the message is really important. I think that the message was because the manufacturers of the vaccine, let's say, they didn't know, nobody knew what was going to happen with the vaccine, and nobody knew until the end. And I don't think that they know also until now all of the side effects or the success rate. I think there was from the beginning a lot of hit and miss messages. So you confuse a huge population that probably they wanted, or they were a little bit more neutral on the neutral spec. You convince them a lot. You confuse them a lot.
Yes.
So the moment that you confuse them, it's like I'm telling you to basically to install this app. If I didn't convince you from the beginning to keep it, you're probably or you're going to forget it, or you're going to delete it. So a big pool of these people, because of these confusing messages, and that I tend to agree, a little bit of a bad PR movement, probably was
because of the mixed messages. Yeah,
because of the mix. It was basically like a confusing or unconfusing, a successful or unsuccessful campaign. So that's one. The other one, culture, I think that is playing a really huge important. Culture and politics is playing like a huge important factor. For the countries that, for example, I'm talking about, for example, Malaysia, um, um, China, Israel, the ones that are a little bit, that's purely my opinion, nobody should shoot me, that are a little bit more obedient to the government.
yes,
It was much easier to convince them, right? I think that even Indonesia is in this place, right? The ones that, if a politician is telling me to do that, I'm going to basically
yes.
do it. But if you're looking,
So where they are
in
more,
the east,
yeah,
but if, for example, you're looking in the Eastern Europe, where everybody does fuck all for when the politician is saying something,
yeah,
of course the vaccination rate is probably like what, 20-30%.
yes. And I think you're right. So it goes to the authority of governments, and it's amazing to me how little authority they seem to have, and like across the board. So like you say, some populations are more deferent than other populations. And the other thing is that, because I think in these terms, governments do marketing. So in my lifetime in the UK,
but purely marketing. Sorry to interrupt you, Martin. Purely because I think that you said a really interesting thing. You said something that we used a lot of scarcity. If the message was positive, a little bit more, okay, COVID is bad, we understand, blah, blah, blah. But hey, here is the sunshine. Here is basically to return to the beach and go to the beach.
yes.
I think that was a little bit more successful, because they used so much horror story, and horror is never, what is basically selling in marketing is selling humor, and it's a little tragedy, but tragedy did with a little bit of conscious. And I think that we played tragedy plus scarcity and death and so on, which in my opinion, 14 years of doing marketing, I never seen a successful campaign.
Around fear and
death and
yes. Yeah, so I'm just thinking, like in my lifetime, there have been 3 major like health campaigns by certainly the UK government. So the first one was drinking and driving. So when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, there were always ads about drinking and driving, and basically it was really effective because over time they brought down the numbers of people who were drinking and driving, and the numbers of accidents and blah blah. The second one I think was probably anti-smoking, which has been more or less successful, I think. And the third one is seatbelts in cars. So, and they come up with catchphrases for each of these things. So like the seatbelts one was clunk, click, every trip. So it just seems to me like they've got, like, and even during the war, so you could say, okay, this was an emergency situation, so what could they do? But even during the war, they had these slogans and these phrases like loose lips save lives. We know them. I know them 70 years later. Loose lips save lives, dig for victory, keep calm and carry on. They did marketing before. And it just seems to me that at every level, this just went wrong. And I met somebody recently who was very anti-vax, but he had COVID and it was a nightmare. He was the first person I've spoken to who was seriously ill with it. And he's like, it's a terrible thing. But I haven't really heard from anyone who's marketing this vaccine that, of the dangers, the threats, I don't know. So it just seems to me like if you think of it, like if there is a case study for the worst marketing campaign, the most successful, like 80% of people are vaccinated in some countries. You know what I mean? That's stupidly successful. But if they hadn't said it had to be 100%, then we'd be saying, wow, look how brilliantly they've done, you know? But yeah, so it just seems to me that we might have seen the best example ever of how not to do marketing this year.
On a global level, on a global scale.
On a global scale.
But you need to take also in consideration a few factors. But one of them is that principles in marketing and technology in marketing is changing. You need to adapt, and I don't think that they were using the latest trends in marketing. When I'm talking about the latest trends, I'm talking also about the latest technology. I cannot give you now an example. I think that we were still using the same old stereotypes of doing a government campaign, and I don't think that is actually thinking out loud. Do a video game or do a ad where someone is shooting the COVID, you know, like that logo.
Yeah.
That circle and the crown. You know, like I think that, and in the end of the day, you could say that, hey, look how easy it is to kill the vaccine, get vaccinated, right? I mean, probably it's the most stupid thing that I could have said now. But that's basically what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Be smart when you're doing marketing, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
well, find ways
I need to agree with you here.
Yeah, find different messages and find ways to deliver those messages is like, so you're right, there was nothing modern. But the other thing is how quickly they gave up on it. Because if you think about that curve, they were probably making headway into the Conservatives. And then all of a sudden they just stopped. They're like, we're not marketing this anymore. We're just going to mandate this. We're going to make everyone have it. And that to me seems dangerous. I don't think it's going to make it more or less effective. That's what I think. Okay, but good.
Just one thing I want to add, because I would not be able to sleep tonight if I would not say this. I think that going back to the previous subject, your initial subject with the social media, I think that everybody has an opinion now, and everybody thinks that knows everything, which was not the case with all of these campaigns that you had with the seatbelt and so on. I think that the social media and the penetration of the internet gave to a lot of people a voice, and it gave to a lot of people the power to think that if they're reading a fake article or any type of article, they know everything and they're better than doctors.
Yes.
So I need to admit that it's a little bit more challenging to actually to convince someone to take a certain action now because of the internet and because of the power of knowledge, which it's another discussion also.
Yeah. So that also goes to the decline, I think, in authority, which is like during the war in London, people were given gas masks. No one said, I'm not wearing this mask. Yeah, so I just think it's interesting to think of it in those terms. And I think you're right. There's nothing modern about the way they went about it, but there's nothing even like sensible, I don't think. It's just not good marketing. Just not good marketing. Okay, cool. Back to you. What do you have for us? What was your second story?
It's quite interesting. We're moving from Trump to single days, from single days to vaccine, and from vaccine to iOS 15 and the world of Facebook. I think that you have it. You had that also.
Yes. So, what is your take on this, and what's it going to mean?
So, what basically happened in the beginning of the year and the entire drama and the entire war with the Facebook was the fact that with the update on iOS 15, people are the ones that they have an Apple device. I'm talking about an iPhone, for example. It's going to be really difficult for Facebook to basically track you. And it's going to be really difficult, for example, because privacy is basically the major factor. They're not going to be able to, for Facebook to actually to understand that, hey, this is basically Martin, and he visited this website, and what we are seeing is also the audiences on Facebook are shrinking, and it's going to be really challenging for advertisers to basically track users that they have iOS devices. Facebook completely shuffled globally the entire platform, and now you have only 8 events that you can basically put a priority to them. We see that the analytics on Facebook are not so relevant anymore now. And the latest problem is that with iOS 15 and the latest updates is that you're actually able to hide your email address. That means if you have a funnel, let's say abandoned browsing or abandoned cart or any other funnel, if you're sending a series of email, I'm basically going to be able to see only the first message, and after this I'm not going to be able to track you all of, I cannot be able to send you another message, and so on, because the open rate is no longer a metrics that you can basically detect in iOS for the Apple users. So that's basically the entire story that happened with iOS 14, iOS 15, and Apple and privacy. That I think Google is soon going to be followed, probably not until that extent, because they still rely fundamentally on ads and tracking, but that's something that is challenging.
Yeah, so this is interesting because I interviewed on the Talk Marketing thing my friend Tom. He runs a very successful results-only YouTube advertising channel. And he was talking about this, and this is the first time it really came up for me. I'm not doing a huge amount of Facebook advertising. I'm not doing huge amounts of advertising at all. But he was saying that, just get over it. Like, people have got drunk on the data, and what they need to do now is just move on. It's going to be, again, much less about the pinpoint targeting. It's going to be much more about the message and the values and all of those things. So that was kind of his take on it. And what do I think about that? I mean, I think, because, I'm just a terrible old cynic, I think that Apple took full advantage of it. You saw the ad that came out where they're saying basically you're picking up all these spies everywhere you go and Apple is saving you now. But interestingly, it was really only Facebook who weren't allowed to give you cookies any longer or track you in the way that they were previously. So, and not Google. So Tom's argument was that Apple and Google are in this together. And the thing about it is that Apple are still tracking you. They are still tracking you. Apple are tracking you. Do you know what I mean? So, it's not a huge, like, basically they've stopped one big company tracking you, which is Facebook. And I don't think...
It's not only, I need to contradict you here, it's not only Facebook, it's definitely also Facebook, but it's also, it's affecting all of the email marketing tools, because once again, the issue with iOS 15, or the issue for me as a user, is amazing. I can basically hide my email. So what's basically happening, technically speaking, every time that you as a company, you're sending me an email, it doesn't matter if I open it or not, but what basically I'm redirecting you, and you're going to see in the dashboard that I actually opened the email, which I didn't. So you're basically not going to send me any more emails. So the numbers of the open rate are basically going to be inflated for iOS users. So the open rate is going to become a vanity metric, which is not going to be relevant. So you need to find ways of, one, say to the user maybe that, hey, can you please, because there is a setting that not for all of the companies I need to hide my email, which nobody's going to do it, which you need for Facebook, every time that you install an app, for the Apple users, for every single app, you need to say, are you allowing to track my devices or not? And believe me, I said to every single one, no, even Facebook. So the relevancy that I cannot basically track you so much in the most targeted way possible and the privacy game is changing. And what I need to do as a marketer, I need to go back to probably affiliators. I need to go back to doing SEO as I used to do it very well, 4 years ago, and it's becoming trendy again. It probably was always, but people, they were more comfortable investing money in Facebook and Google and so on. You see what I mean?
The thing is, I think it became lazy marketing. It became too easy for marketers, I think. That's what I think. And so, what do I think? Yeah, so what I definitely don't think is, I don't think Apple are doing this for the good of their users. I think they're doing it for commercial reasons. I think they will come out with ways of generating revenue from the fact that they aren't. So if it's the email service providers they're not playing with, if it's Facebook they're not playing with, then marketers are going to be looking for other solutions. And I'd be very surprised if Apple didn't come up with a solution like that early next year. Interestingly, I don't think it affects Google in the same way. I don't think they have the same issue with Google. If we're talking about privacy, I did some work with an ISP this year, and I did some marketing strategy work with them. And when it came to targeting, they're like, we know everything about all of our customers. And it's like, and we know if our customers are about to leave us because they will go to our competitors' websites. So they can set up triggers, like they literally know, like your ISP know everything about you. Like every single website that you're visiting, they really do. It shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but when they kind of laid it out, I kind of was surprised because we don't know. So basically, your ISP know exactly what you're doing, unless you've got a VPN, in which case your VPN know exactly what you're doing, and the handset manufacturers know exactly what you're doing. So I don't know that this was a step forward for privacy necessarily.
Depends who you're seeing. Once again, depends who are you seeing, or from which point are you actually seeing. For me as a user, you're probably not a Apple user, right? iPhone user.
I use Apple computers. I don't use, because they're mum's phones,
Okay.
remember?
Yeah, best phones ever, if you ask me.
But you haven't tried another phone. Well, you did used to use different phones. Yeah, maybe. The force is strong with Apple. The brand is strong. That's the thing about
this fucking ecosystem is probably what everybody is talking about, but that's not the point. The point is, me as a marketer, I need to be creative because times are changing. Whatever Apple knows what the hell you're doing on the device is not relevant for me. What is relevant is that is blocking the access to different platforms like Facebook, email marketing, ads, cookies, Safari, browsing history, blocking different pop-ups, etc., etc. That's the part that me as a marketer, I need to be creative in order to find ways to find you, you know?
Yeah. So the thing is, the laser targeting and the huge data has gone away. It's gone away for Apple users, iPhone users, which I don't know what the percentage that is. It 50% still of people in the world who are using mobile phones use Apple phones. So
depends.
Yeah.
I think that the statistics, you need to take it a little bit different. I think that you need to take it from a perspective of your industry or your country. It doesn't matter if it's 50% or wide. It depends a lot in your current market, how big it is, and if you're looking on the Google Analytics and you're doing a split in the device, if it's like 5%, you shouldn't give a shit. But if it's, for example, 20%, then you should have some problems, because in the end of the day, it's 20% of your revenue.
Yes. Okay, so that's interesting then. That brings us to my third story, which was the metaverse. So Facebook don't need to worry because people won't be accessing Facebook very shortly through their iPhones. They'll be accessing it through their VR headsets. and we'll get to know all about all of these people all over again. The issue is that what we'll know about these people is that they're spending all their day lying on their sofa with their VR headset on. They're not going to be buying physical things anymore. It's not good for markets. It's not good for marketers. And I just feel like I saw somebody talking about this, responding to it, and it's like basically Facebook is a news feed. Do you know what I mean? It's like it is essentially it's a news feed. And they don't do a very good job of that. I don't use Facebook. I use Facebook to wish everyone a happy birthday, and then I'm done with Facebook every day. So I don't know how you're feeling about the metaverse and Facebook becoming Meta. And
Have you seen? Do you see my screen? Do you remember this photo a few years ago? I think that this photo is basically has like 4 years ago. So it was this famous photo with Mark Zuckerberg that was basically walking in the room, and everybody was hooked. I think that they were announcing the latest Oculus, and it was basically this mass full of people, as you can see here, and Zuckerberg was basically the only one that didn't have the VR set, which is quite funny if you're looking now into perspective. With the metaverse and the VR. Rise of the Facebook zombies.
Rise of the Facebook zombies, is that what you're saying? I've lost my...
There was a photo, one of the memes.
Yeah. So what do I... I think it's kind of it's frightening, matrixy kind of frightening is what I think it is. Oh, I've got a really bad view of me on now. I think I don't know what we're looking at anymore. It's kind of frightening matrix wise, but I don't think it's really going to fly. I mean, I've worn a VR headset for about 10 seconds of my life. I'm not engaged in computer games or anything like that. It's clearly not targeting me, but what's the point of that? The point of that is scary, not good for marketers. That's kind of my major point, because if people are spending their entire lives in these virtual environments, what are they going to spend money on? They're not going to be spending money on car accessories. They're not going to be spending money necessarily on surf photography. What are they going to be spending their money on? That's what I want to know.
They're going to spend. People are already buying lands in all of this metaverse, because what basically was triggering Meta was, I know that you're not a big fan of crypto, but it was basically triggering avalanche of shitty metaverses, some with a really good potential, some really shitty, only going for the money. But there are people now buying virtual lands and buildings. And I was reading a couple of days, a virtual land in one of the metaverse was selling for I don't know how many hundreds of Ethereums. So if you ask me what people are going to buy in this metaverses, they're probably going to do exactly the same thing what we are doing now. Hey, you remember when people were buying crops in Farmville?
Yeah, so I'm thinking Farmville, and what was the other one called? Money. What was the life one called? Single life, one life, something.
One life, yeah, one life.
Yeah. And the other example
so
of this...
So it's basically the same thing.
So the other thing that's going on, of course, this year is NFTs. So NFTs, I don't get that either. But people are getting very excited about it. I like the world. That's what I think. I like the world, and I like being active. I'm quite happy with reality.
You're quite happy, and I'm quite happy also with the reality. But the NFT, we're going also in a short, long discussion with NFT, and I don't want to take so much time. I think that the power of the NFT or the future of the NFT is definitely there. If you bought a CryptoPunk or any other NFT, like one of the top 3 NFTs, you basically have access to events and private meetings that you're basically going to sell your services. So there is a value there, right? And you're making basically money out of them. I definitely see a future in NFT. If you're following Gary Vee, even if in the beginning I didn't like Gary Vee, but he has some really strong points regarding NFT, and one of them is exactly this: that it's not a JPEG. It's basically what that NFT is giving you, and it's giving you a platform to grow.
I don't enjoy Gary Vee still. I have warmed to him a little bit recently. He seems to have softened a little bit. It seems to me like NFTs are just something else that people can put their money into. People who've got too much money, that's what I think. So that's what I think. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. You know what? If you want something original and something that might be valuable, take it and put it on your wall and actually look at it. You know, I despair, I think, of a future where we're all wearing VR masks all the time.
That's not targeting me and you, or probably is going to. Listen, in the beginning, you also said that you're not going to use a smartphone, and in the end, you started to use a smartphone. I'm absolutely sure of this, right?
Who told you I said I wasn't going to use a smartphone? I was in the queue for the smartphone, and I'll be in the queue for the chip probably when they put it in our heads, according to Elon Musk next year. But
that's another character.
That's another. We are living a soap opera in 2021, brother. We are living in a soap opera. Okay, good. So, what was your last story then? Your last story was...
My last story wasn't necessarily a story. I think it was more connected to the fact of analytics, but I think that I touched multiple times, especially on the part of the Facebook. What I think that is a challenge now is how data. I was reading a really interesting article on the CMO Alliance. Yes, we have a special group of ours, which we call them the CMO Alliance. And it was saying that 65% of the CMOs were actually considered that in 2021 and 2022, data is the main success of driving the business. And I think that we are kind of losing a little bit the importance of data. We don't know. We think that we are really creative and we don't know how to read the data, but the numbers, they don't lie, right? And how you're basically creating correlations with the data, knowing the Google Analytics, going back to your email marketing, all of this data, looking on your ad data. I think that these are really important. I don't think that was necessarily a topic for 2021, like a big news, but I think that data is becoming more and more important, but also because of the recent changes, is becoming, some of the metrics are a little bit more vanity than before, like click-through rate.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I think until Apple come up with whatever it is that they've got in the pipeline, you know, we are going to have to be more creative as marketers. That's what's going to have to happen. But to be fair, I don't think there's anything. I mean, this is essentially what Tom was telling me. It's like basically we've been drunk 2, 3, 4 years on this data, on this pinpoint targeting. It's going to go away. You're just going to have to be much stronger. You're going to have to be much more. You're going to have to know your customer much better. To be able to target them for yourself rather than relying on these platforms doing it. And then you're going to have to be much stronger in your creative so that you get their attention and get them to engage with you. And then, but I think this other thing that you're talking about, this idea that actually we don't get to own the customer, not own is the wrong word. We don't get to have the customer anymore. The customer are behind all these platforms.
Belongs. Yeah, they're behind I mean, like, that's the problem with all of this. We discussed earlier regarding the single days, and the trend is that basically they're buying more from the marketplaces, but the data is not yours.
Yes.
or the end customer is actually not yours, because you don't know, you know the name, you know probably the phone number, you know the address, but you don't know the email address. So in basically to start selling you some other things that I have, some other products. And if one moment that platform is saying like, you did something wrong, coming back to what we discussed regarding Facebook, they have basically, because it's not your platform, they have all of the power to delete your account. What happens to your business then?
Yes. And that is the point that I was trying to make about this cancel culture. Like, it's gone beyond the social media platforms. It's like if Lazada were to shut you down, or Tokopedia were to shut you down, or Etsy, or any one of these platforms were to shut you down. If you are dependent on those businesses for your income, you are going to be in trouble. Brother, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. This is kind of what I have in mind, is that we just have a conversation for an hour about what's going on in the world and what it means for marketers. What do you think?
I think it was better than expected, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean,
yeah.
I just wanted to say that it doesn't matter what we think. I'm really curious to see the comments.
If we get comments, we will have to see. If we streamed, we might have comments now. We might be looking at the comments section right now and answering those questions. I think at some point in the future, because I did do a little bit of market research, there are between, I don't advertise with Google, so I don't know the exact number. You probably do, so you could do the research. But there are between 10,000 and 100,000 searches a month for marketing news. So I think if we do a good job of this, we could be helping a lot of people. That's what I think. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So when are we going to do the next one?
After my vacation. In January.
In January. When are you back from vacation?
On the 3rd of January.
Okay, can we lock in Thursday at 5 o'clock? Can we make this the time that we do this?
I even don't know. We can discuss offline.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
but we can say this. It feels like I'm hired for this radio station, but I need to come up with the news. Hello, I'm your anchorman. How you call it?
Yeah, but I don't. You know, they don't ever say hello. I'm your anchorman. The thing is, you told me was it an hour? Or was it an hour and a half? You spend a day keeping up with what's going on.
And you gave some fake news, and you said 90 minutes.
Okay, so it's an hour a day. So you've got basically 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week, and we're going to spend an hour talking about it. You know, it's fine. This could replace one of your hours that you're doing research. Okay, cool. Excellent. All right, my chocolate's here, my evening chocolate. So I love you very much. I hope you have a great Christmas, and I will catch up with you in January.
Peace.
Cheers, buddy.